In November and December, Todd Golden entered, obviously, the season after winning the national championship with a really, really difficult non-conference slate. A slate that featured a game in Las Vegas against Arizona. A slate that featured, obviously, a game at Duke as part of the ACC-SEC Challenge. A slate that featured UConn in Madison Square Garden as part of the Jimmy V Classic. Florida lost a lot of close games. And even though the record for the Florida Gators was not obviously reflective of a team that, for all intents and purposes, was going to be seated high at the time if the NCAA tournament obviously was put together, Florida did show the knack of a team that had the requisites to be good really, really late. It seems like being good really, really late could happen, but it seems like the Gators are a little bit better maybe before we thought they'd be, because here in mid-January, Florida has won on an absolute tear in the SEC. Now, it's one thing to hold serve at home. It is one thing to take care of business in Gainesville, but Florida has ripped through its competition with an offense right now that is really starting to hit on all cylinders. Florida won Saturday at Vanderbilt. Florida has stacked up wins at home against Tennessee, against Georgia, and also on the road against Oklahoma. All three of those games came by double figures. And Florida also had an epic win on Saturday against Vanderbilt. Now, during this 4-game winning streak, Florida is averaging over 94 points per game. I talked to Todd Golden about what has led to Florida's recent resurgence. It's real simple. Boogie Flan's assist numbers are up at point guard. Florida has also tightened its rotation to 8 players. Now we're starting to see 8 players cemented in the Gators rotation. The role allocation, the rhythm, the chemistry is all starting to settle in for Florida. And another thing that I think really needs to be pointed out, Florida's not turning the ball over as much as it was early in the season, and Florida seems, for all intents and purposes, to have unlocked something in Ruben Chinyelu, who was a starter on last year's team that won the national championship and came back to obviously have a bigger piece of the pie. And he is playing during this 4-game winning streak like an all-SEC first-team caliber player during this run where Florida has beaten Tennessee, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt, 3 of those wins by double figures. Chinyelu is averaging 16.5 points and 10.5 rebounds. Now, I was in studio over the weekend, and we were talking about whether or not you view Florida as a real contender based on the way it's playing. And this is what I will tell you. To win the NCAA tournament, to win 6 games in a row, you've got to have elite guard play. We saw it last year when Florida had Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, Denzel Aberdeen, who I'm going to talk about in just a couple of minutes here. Obviously, Will Richard. I don't know if Florida just yet has enough in the backcourt to win a national championship. I do think Florida, though, without question, with the right draw, could be a team that gets back to the Final Four for the 2nd consecutive year. And we have to remember, the 4 front court guys for Florida, Thomas Houck, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, Micah Handlogden, were all part of a team that won a national championship last year. We have to remember, Urban Klavshar was part of a team that played and won a national championship last year by beating Houston in the title game. And I really think that Klavshar, because of his ability to shoot the basketball, add balance to the court, is the guy, in my opinion, that is a big wild card moving forward for Florida. When he's on the floor, the Gators have better spacing. When he's on the floor, the Gators have better balance across the board. And when he's on the floor, all of a sudden, it's harder to double team the low post for the opponent because he's always stretching the defense. I was going over my numbers earlier today. When Florida gets double-figure scoring from Urban Klavshar, the Gators this season are 7-1. I know it's still early January, or it's mid-January right now because it's January 19th as we're doing this show. Florida, to me, now, I don't know if they're going to be there at the end, but Florida, to me, is playing the best basketball out of anybody in the SEC. Lee, Fland finally coming into their own. Boogie Fland, assist numbers are up. Stability is up in terms of turning the basketball over. Florida doesn't have what it had in the backcourt last year when it won a national championship, but time will tell if it has enough. Now, you know as well as I do, this is only January. Meanwhile, Kentucky came back not once on the road, but twice on the road last week. First at LSU, then at Tennessee on Saturday, down by 17 or more points in both of those games. It was an epic comeback for the Wildcats in Knoxville on Saturday. It was an alarming defeat for Tennessee. But what we're seeing right now for Kentucky is this: incredible resilience and also the emergence of a new focal point on the perimeter, and that's Denzel Aberdeen, who, ironically enough, as I was just talking about Florida, was an integral part of the Gators team that won a national championship last season. Aberdeen made the decision then to transfer to Kentucky, and with Jalen Lowe out for the season, Aberdeen has went on an incredible tear. In the 3 games since Jalen Lowe was lost for the season with a shoulder injury, which he had been battling for the majority of the year, Denzel Aberdeen has become a go-to guy for Kentucky on the perimeter. During those 3 games, he's averaging over 18 points per game. He is becoming a steadying presence on the perimeter and a go-to scorer. Now, the question is, can Kentucky now continue to add to its momentum? Because here's one thing we're seeing. When you play in a league like the SEC, there is going to be a situation where any single time you take the floor, you are capable of losing to the opponent. The bottoms of these power conferences are all bad. I know that. I understand that. I embrace that. But I will say this: Kentucky earlier last week went on the road to a bottom 4 team in LSU and needed a buzzer beater from Malachi Moreno to beat the Tigers. Kentucky also is in a situation where not only was it playing at LSU and needed a buzzer beater, but LSU did not have De'Don Thomas, its all-SEC point guard, in the lineup as well. So you're very capable in the SEC of losing to any opponent on a given night. I'll give you another example. Texas had a stretch where it went to Alabama, beat the Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa, came home, was the first team to beat Vanderbilt this season, and then lost on Saturday at home to Texas A&M. And full credit to Texas A&M. But Kentucky, in order to keep its momentum going, has to hold serve at home this week against Texas and against Ole Miss. Texas coming off a loss against Texas A&M. Ole Miss coming off 2 road wins last week, one at the buzzer against Georgia, and then another on the road against Mississippi State. But incredible resolve, incredible resiliency for Kentucky. And why is this homestand so important for Mark Pope's squad? After these 2 games, the next 2 games for the Wildcats at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas. Kentucky has to go 2-0 this week at Rupp Arena. And I think the one thing we're seeing now in the SEC is that the SEC could have the most representation out of any power conference in the NCAA tournament. I'm just not sure just yet how many Final Four contenders there are in the league. On some days, I think Florida could be. On other days, I think Arkansas could be. But the road has been extremely unkind to Arkansas in SEC play. In 3 SEC road games this season, Arkansas is giving up an average of 90.7 points per game. That is a major concern for John Calipari's squad, who will host Vanderbilt on Tuesday night at Bud Walton Arena.